All right, welcome to another edition of Environmental Science. This is going to be the first part of Chapter 3. Again, we're going to be talking about ecosystem dynamics. So, we're going to be talking about, for this part, just different layers of Earth and all the different components that go with that. But also, too, we'll talk about both abiotic, biotic factors, we'll talk about animals, and all that different stuff. So, when we talk about 3.1, essentially we're going to be talking about the Earth sphere. So there's going to be four different types of, life support system based on these four spheres. So again, the first part is we talk about the geosphere. So this would include the Earth's core, crust, and mantle. Okay, the hydrosphere, hydro meaning any type of, water. The hydrosphere is going to deal with all the gaseous, liquid and solid water on or near Earth's surface. So again, when we talk about gas, I will talk about H2O. Liquid, again, water that you drink, and then a solid that'd be like ice. The atmosphere, again, the atmosphere is going to be the gas that surrounds the Earth. We've been talking about the atmosphere with greenhouse gases and all that stuff. So again, all the gases that are going to surround the Earth, and then the biosphere is going to be where Earth, or it's going to be all of where life is. And this zone is where, again, we live. Any type of life is found. So, through a process known as the greenhouse effect, we see that without the greenhouse effect, Earth would be too cold to support life as we know it. So, again, when we talk about the atmosphere, we talk about greenhouse gases. And so, what that causes is the Earth to capture any heat from the sun. And so we do need it, right? Outer space is really cold. If we didn't have that heat from the sun, we would be all dead. So we do need it. The fact that we were talking about before is the fact that if we have too much of it, it might be too hot, but we still need it. We still need the warmth. And so think of the atmosphere, think of the greenhouse gas as like wearing a winter coat. You know, at first the winter coat isn't that warm. It doesn't have like implanted heaters or anything like that. I mean, you probably could, but what happens is your body is going to radiate heat, right? We talked about sweating, we talked about any type of movement. You're going to release heat. Instead of that heat going into the environment, what your jacket does or what your coat does, your winter coat, is it's going to trap that heat, and that's how you stay warm. That's the same idea with the atmosphere and the different gases that we see. And so,
Havel to the principal's office. Miss Havel to the principal's office, please.
what we see is that because of that effect, because of that jacket trapping that heat, we're able to stay warm in the winter. But what we see with the Earth is that these gases are able to trap that heat so that we stay warm or warmer, kind of depending on where you're at. But if we didn't have it, guess what? We'd be dead. We wouldn't have enough heat to stay alive. And so, what's nice about these interactions, again, we talk about the interactions between the geosphere, hydrosphere, atmosphere, and biosphere, is that this allows for the Earth to have both clean air and water. Okay? And so, what are the major components of an ecosystem? Again, this should be kind of familiar when we talk about stuff. Again, we talked about a lot of it last year with whatever biology class you did take as a freshman. And so, the major components that we see are going to be ecology, or at least that's going to be one of them. And again, ecology is different from environmental science. Okay, environmental science is going to be the human interaction with an environment. Ecology is going to be organisms' interaction with not only each other, but with their non-living environment. And so what we see is that ecosystems are going to be composed of energy, chemicals, and organisms. And so scientists are going to classify matter into different levels of organizations, and that's going to range from molecules to galaxies. And so again, ecologists are going to be studying the interactions within and among several of these levels. And so the different levels of organization that we talk about range from an atom to biosphere. So again, an atom is going to be the smallest unit of a chemical element that exhibits its chemical properties. So we talk about nitrogen, carbon, oxygen, phosphorus, any type of element, there's going to be an atom with it. A molecule is going to be a chemical combination of two or more atoms of the same or different elements. So, for example, carbon dioxide, CO2, which is the same thing. The C represents carbon. The O represents oxygen. Carbon dioxide means that there's one carbon atom attached to two oxygen atoms. The same thing goes with water, or H2O. Again, there's two hydrogen atoms attached to one oxygen atom. A cell, which is going to be the next level up, is going to be the fundamental structure and functional unit of life. So again, when we talk about humans, there's two types of cells that we see with certain organisms. You can either have a multicellular or unicellular. And again, humans have multicellular systems, so we have multiple cells. What we see with some bacteria is that they might just have one single cell that allows them to live. The next step in the cell would be an organism. So again, an individual living entity, such as a bacteria or a plant. So again, we are an organism. Humans are organisms, and again, it's all those cells that are going to come together that's going to create organs and then organ systems, and then boom, an organism, right? The next thing past an organism is a population. So it's going to be a group of individuals of the same species living in a particular place. So again, when we talk about the city of Rockton, again, the population is based on how many humans live in that city. It's not based on how many organisms live in there. Nope. When we talk about population, we just talk about one of that thing living in a particular space. A community would be the populations of different species living in a particular or potentially interacting with each other. So again, we could talk about a rainforest, and that rainforest would be a community because we're seeing all those different living species living all together. So we could talk about all the plants that live there, all of the animals that live there, like the frogs, insects, mammals, birds, all those different things living together. The next step would be the ecosystem. So again, the ecosystem would be both living and non-living things. So again, we talk about the plants, animals, but we also include the different rocks that may live there, the different stuff that are non-living would live there. Okay, and then the next one would be the biosphere, and again, that would include everything found in life. So again, we talk about air, water, soil, non-living things, living things, all these different things living together. That would be the biosphere. That'd be the largest of them all. And the biosphere is going to contain the atom, the molecule, the cell, the organism, population, community, and ecosystem. And so we got to talk about biotic and abiotic things. So biotic means that something is living. So examples of that would be plants, animals, microbes, all other organisms. And so what we see is that with the biotic interactions, that they're going to have different trophic levels. And that depends on whether the organism is going to make their own food, so a producer, or the organism needs to find food, so a consumer. And so essentially what its feeding behavior it's going to be depending on what type of consumer it is. So again, plants are producers. Again, they're able to produce their own food. Humans, animals, most animals are going to be consumers, and it just depends on what they feed on is going to be the type of consumer. And we'll talk about that later. Abiotic components means water, air, rocks, nutrients, thermal energy, sunlight, essentially anything that's non-living. Not anything that's dead, but anything that's non-living. So, for example, let's say your dog Lucky passed away after living a long, successful life of 35 years, right? Lucky, the dog, doesn't turn from biotic to abiotic. No, that's not what I mean. What it means is that Lucky is just dead, right? It's still biotic. It used to be a living thing, but it's dead. It's not non-living. Non-living means it's never been able to breathe. It's never gone through any type of cellular respiration or photosynthesis or anything to that point. Again, abiotic means non-living. That means there's not any type of system going through it. Biotic means that it is living. Just because something died still makes it biotic. Okay? So again, we look through just kind of how biotic and abiotic components interact with each other. So again, the decomposers. This rabbit, it looks like, died. I don't know what happened there, but the decomposers are going to decompose, are going to break down that dead animal, and it's going to reintroduce those nutrients back into the soil here. And so all these nutrients are going to go up, including the water, into the roots of this tree. The tree is going to take in both the water and the nutrients from the dead or the decomposed nutrients from this rabbit, and it's going to go through this tree. Again, through carbon dioxide, through precipitation or water coming from the soil here, you're going to see that the tree is going to take it in and create its own food. After photosynthesis, which we'll talk about in a little bit, it's going to release oxygen and it's going to release its own food that it's going to eat. It's also going to, you're going to see precipitation off the trees, and that's, or evaporation from the trees, which is going to re-enter the atmosphere, and then precipitation is going to allow water to re-enter the ground. And then we see here this fox, this hungry fox, is going to go after this rabbit. That's how it's going to get its food. The rabbit's going to get the food from plants, leaves, all that stuff. And then again, you just see this cycle here. So again, you see both living and non-living things working together. So when we talk about organisms existing, we talked about producers and consumers. There's another name for it. So autotrophs, aka producers or plants, are any organisms that are going to be able to make their own energy through either photosynthesis or chemosynthesis, right? So with plants, they use photosynthesis, right? So they're going to take in energy from the sun, and through a chemical reaction, they're going to create their own food. With chemosynthesis, they're going to make their energy in the absence of sunlight, and they're going to use inorganic compounds to create their own food. Heterotrophs, or consumers, are organisms that cannot make their own food. So for example, I can't just go outside, stick my arm outside to just get a little snack from the sun. That's not how it works. I have to hunt for my food. I either have to hunt for that salad or hunt for that cheeseburger, right? I have all these different options in which I have to go out and get my own food. I just can't make it myself. And so that's the big difference between an autotroph and a heterotroph, is that with an autotroph, they have to make their own food. They can't hunt anything else. But with the heterotroph, you have to hunt for your own food. And so what we see is that producers of plants are going to use photosynthesis to make nutrients. And so they have to take in carbon dioxide, they have to take in water, and they have to take in the sunlight. And after photosynthesis, what you see is that oxygen is going to be released, and glucose, or the sugar, or the food, is going to be created for that plant to take in. So again, on the left side, we see reactants. On the right side, we see products. So this is reactants, this is products. And so the left side here is going to be the sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water. On the right side, it's going to be that glucose and that oxygen. Consumers are going to have to feed on other organisms, and so herbivores are going to be any type of plant either, so rabbits, squirrels, anything that's going to eat plants in order to get their energy. Carnivores are just plain meat eaters, so again, we talk about foxes, lions, wolves. All of them are carnivores. They just eat meat to get their food. Omnivores are going to eat both plants and meat. So again, bears are an example of omnivores. They're able to eat both berries and animals. Humans are omnivores. They're able to eat both plants and meat. A primary consumer is going to eat green plants and or algae. So they're going to eat the producers. The secondary consumer are going to eat the primary consumers, and the tertiary consumer is going to eat both the primary/secondary. Okay, the tertiary consumer is going to eat the secondary consumer. Okay. but they also could eat the primary consumer, but most likely just a secondary consumer. Decomposers and the detritivores. So decomposers are going to be consumers that get their nutrients by breaking down or decomposing non-living organic matter. So that would be like leaf litter, fallen trees, dead animals. Non-living organic just means that they're dead. It doesn't mean that they're non-living abiotic. Again, non-living are just dead organic matter. Okay? Detritivores are the nasty ones. They're going to get their nourishment by feeding on fecal matter or poop, essentially, like the dung beetle. They're going to get their food or their nutrients from poop, right? That or freshly dead organisms. So another example of that would be a vulture. A vulture is going to get their nutrients from dead organisms before they fully decompose. Again, what you're going to see is that the decomposers are going to be like the bacteria that are going to decompose or break down that organic matter, that dead organic matter. The detritivores are either going to go after the fecal matter or they're going to go after the freshly dead organisms like the vultures or the dung beetles. And so decomposers and detritivores are key to the nutrient cycle because it's going to break down those dead matter into the nutrients that are needed to be reintroduced into the soils. And so again, what we see is that through the progression, you're going to have different larvae, different beetles, different insects and all that may decompose this tree. And so eventually it's going to get decomposed to the point where different bacteria, different fungi are going to feed on it. And so again, it's going to go from this big log all the way to this small pile of powdery substance in which fungi and other different bacteria are going to be feasting on it. So again, you're going to see all types of biotic things going after it. So insects, fungi, bacteria, all these different things are going to be there to break down that fallen log. Again, this group here would be the detritivores because this is freshly fallen. But these, after some time, the decomposers are going to further break down the organic matter that we see here, okay? And so the main components of an ecosystem, that would be the producers. Again, they're going to get their energy from the sun. The producers are going to be eaten by some type of consumer, or if it's not the plant, from the zebra eating the plant, it's going to be this lion that's going to go after the zebra. Once that lion or zebra dies and they're eaten, the decomposers are going to break them down, and they're going to break them down into some type of chemical nutrients, so carbon dioxide, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon, phosphorus, all these different minerals are going to be fed back into the producers, and you're just going to see the cycle here. Along this cycle, you're going to see that heat is going to exit. So again, when we move, we release heat. When we do any type of action, we release heat. The same thing goes for all of these cycles here, is that heat is going to be either reintroduced from solar energy or it's going to be released from the actions that we do. Again, that's what we were talking about before, about like with running around, with sweating and all that, you're releasing some type of heat. Cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is how we breathe. And so with cellular respiration, we release chemical energy stored in glucose or any other organic compounds. So again, the difference between aerobic or anaerobic respiration is the difference between using oxygen or not using oxygen. So what happens is that through aerobic respiration, that's the use of oxygen and glucose. What we do is we take in glucose or some type of sugar. We also take in oxygen, right? So this is going to be the opposite of photosynthesis. We take in oxygen and glucose, so that glucose would be our food, taking the food from somewhere else. We take in that oxygen from the atmosphere. after the chemical reaction, we release carbon dioxide, we release water, and then we use up that energy and we release that energy. Anaerobic respiration is going to occur in the absence of oxygen. So what you're going to see is that methane, ethyl alcohol, acetic acid, hydrogen sulfide, all these different things are going to be used and released through anaerobic respiration. Think about it when you exercise, right? When you have a very laid back exercise, you're not really breathing that hard. You have a lot of oxygen going in and out. But if you're in gym class and you got to run around really fast, or you're playing football, basketball, and all that, and you get tired, you're going to have a lack of oxygen. So are you going to collapse because you don't have enough oxygen? No. What happens is that anaerobic respiration is going to occur. You're going to be able to get that energy that you need, but from that, you're going to be creating a lot of different things outside of just the CO2, oxygen, or CO2, water, and energy from aerobic respiration. Again, you're going to be creating lactic acid, some type of acid, methane, ethanol, or ethyl alcohol, and hydrogen sulfide are going to be used in it. Okay, so again, that's what we see with the anaerobic respiration, is that you're still going to be able to create that energy and use that energy without oxygen, but other things are going to be created with it. Okay, so aerobic uses oxygen, and again, it's just the opposite of photosynthesis. Anaerobic respiration is going to be the fermentation or using energy without the presence of oxygen. Okay, and so if we look at the different trophic levels here, the producers, there's going to be a lot more producers here. Again, we're going to go more in depth with how this looks, but again, the producers are going to be at the bottom. The herbivores or the primary consumers are going to eat that. The omnivores or possibly the secondary consumers are going to eat the primary consumers, and then the tertiary possible carnivores are going to be eating the secondary consumer. And then the decomposers are going to decompose the producers, the herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. And this is enough to get you guys going through the introduction to Chapter 3.